Man, I was on vacation yesterday, but yep, still sitting there watching Fox News because it was too sweet to watch the meltdowns happen in real place. A little montage there. So we want to get a legal expert, an elected legal expert, to come on to talk about this and also something taking place in the state of Missouri that you need to be aware of. The Attorney General for the state of Missouri, Andrew Bailey. Supreme Court comes back 9-0 in favor of keeping Trump's name on the ballot in Colorado. Attorney General, what was your reaction to the news from the Supreme Court, which you have worked with, and also the reaction of all of the legal scholars in the media?
Well, the media looks stupid as usual because they planted a flag on a hill they couldn't defend. They were out on a limb on this thing. Look, the 14th Amendment, there were provisions of the 14th Amendment that were enacted in the 1860s to prevent Confederate politicians from serving in Congress. It has nothing at all to do with President Donald Trump being on the ballot in the United States of America in 2024. And so it was never going to stand. That was always going to be reversed. Thank goodness the United States Supreme Court did the right thing there. I was surprised it was unanimous, but I think that speaks to the specious nature of the legal claims raised by the state of Colorado and the other states that were trying to deny the rest of us a democratic process. The funniest part about this whole thing, I mean, it's dripping with irony, Annie, that at the end of the day, the left wants to claim that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and yet they want to deprive voters of the ability to vote for their chosen candidate. That is undermining the democratic process. Nothing that Donald Trump has done has undermined the democratic process. That's what the left is doing by trying to deprive him of access to the ballot.
I'm glad you phrased it that way. That is such an important point to make because I always talk about how the Democrats are always saying, in order to preserve democracy, you have to only vote Democratic. And that just seems a little too on the nose. Like, I can see what you're trying to do here. Do you believe there to actually be a threat to democracy right now? Or do you believe that the institutions and the documents that we have to put in place that fortify this country have withstood what has been challenged against them and will continue to do so in the future? Is there a threat?
I think there is absolutely a threat. I think the enemies of freedom, the enemies of safety, the enemies of prosperity are circling, and some of the enemies are already inside the gate. And if we don't have warriors to fight back, we will lose this country. Let's not forget the Constitution, which, by the way, yesterday was in 1789, yesterday was the day that the Constitution became legally operative on this country. So it's important that we're talking about this kind of in celebration of the founding of our nation under one of the iconic pieces of our national identity is our founding document, the Constitution of the United States of America. And it was written to protect us from the government, and we have a government in order to protect our rights. That's the whole point. And there was a time in this country when we used to elevate the rules of the game above the players and the outcomes. But the left has jettisoned that approach. They no longer care. They no longer care about the text, history, or tradition of the Constitution. They no longer care about following the rules, and they will lie, cheat, and steal to achieve a radical progressive objective that they can't get past through the democratic process. And that is the threat.
So we're speaking with the Attorney General of the state of Missouri, Andrew Bailey, on with us on the Annie Frey Show right now. I continue to see the Democrats, they're moving through this avenue, this lane of lawfare, and they're losing on quite a few big, important fronts for their path to be successful. It's not really working out that way so far, but there's still a lot to be determined. I'd be curious to hear what they have to say about the issues. I would like to know what the Democrat Party has to say about the policies that they have worked to put in place, successfully put in place, like, let's say, for instance, in the very, very navy blue state of Illinois, where I live in, which is really just a county, but I digress. Abortion is one of the main things that they have previously won elections on. It's definitely out of a fear-based mentality. They don't actually talk about what abortion is or when abortion is appropriate in their minds. They just want to make it a free-for-all. The state of Missouri has pulled back on that free-for-all post Roe v. Wade. And you, as the Attorney General, are taking some extra action to make sure that there's no circumvention of that process. What have you filed here recently to try to push back specifically against Planned Parenthood and their devious actions?
Well, Planned Parenthood is a lawless cult of death that is committed to the destruction of human life at the expense of the health and safety of women and girls. Let's look at the history of this issue. In 2018, my predecessor, Josh Hawley, uncovered that the Planned Parenthood clinic in Columbia was using a moldy abortion machine on women and refusing to record information concerning complications from these dangerous procedures. Now, this isn't a machine that sat in the corner and they forgot to clean. They were using it to destroy human life. Let's flash forward to 2019, 2020, when my predecessor, Attorney General Eric Schmidt, uncovered that physicians at Planned Parenthood were willfully refusing to comply with the state law that requires them to notify their patients of the risks concerning these dangerous procedures. They just wouldn't do it. Don't care that's in the law, won't do it. And now, in November of 2023, Project Veritas investigative video at the Planned Parenthood clinic in Kansas City uncovers that agents of the clinic are spiriting minors away across state lines without parental consent, without parental notification, in violation of the law to obtain abortions in other states, and are willing to conceal the sexual exploitation of minors to do it. Planned Parenthood is a mandatory reporter. At 13 years old, a young girl can't consent to sex in the state of Missouri, and yet the video indicates that a girl 13 years old asks to be taken across state lines for an abortion, and the clinic says they're happy to do it, and they'll make sure no one finds out. That's conspiring to conceal a sexual offense against a minor. We filed suit. We're going to hold them accountable. They have a documented history and pattern of refusal to comply with state law. We cannot allow this to happen any longer.
We're speaking with the Attorney General for the state of Missouri, Andrew Bailey. So you're suing them. What is the desired outcome should you win your suit? What would happen here with Planned Parenthood and in the state of Missouri?
First and foremost, we are going to hold them accountable by getting a court order to force them to comply with state statute. That's priority number one. But we're also going to build out a beachhead here. We're going to use the investigative tools available to our office to look back in time and hold any wrongdoers accountable. But at the end of the day, this cannot be allowed to go on. We've got to drive them from our state once and for all. We would never allow any other entity that is this committed to violations of state law to continue to operate within the state of Missouri. And so that's what's at stake.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you fighting for this. And I want to make sure that people understand that the abortion issue is going to be a huge, huge political talking point going further into November this year. But the battle actually, in my opinion, really started after Roe v. Wade was appealed. You look at the state of Missouri and what Missouri has said about the right to life and compare it right next door to the state of Illinois. We see what's going on in the Kansas City area, that this is an opportunity to be very diligent about protecting life, advocating for women, because it truly is a pro-woman approach to work to support these women, to be with these women, and to help them along the way. And of course, it's about those women, but it's about those babies too. And Andrew Bailey, we appreciate what you're doing to advocate for, the lives that are being lost at Planned Parenthood every day, but also for these women who are being led astray by this Planned Parenthood in Kansas City. To think about the crimes that could be aided and abetted by this action on Planned Parenthood, it almost takes my breath away.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And again, we're not talking about a once-in-time isolated incident or one rogue worker at the clinic. The individual in the Project Veritas investigative video is bragging about how it's the habit, routine, and custom of the entire clinic to do this. And again, trafficking minors across state lines without any parental consent. That's criminal. But also refusing to comply with the state's mandatory reporting requirements. These wrongdoers have to be held accountable.
Well, I'm glad that you are taking the efforts of your office to do that. And thank you for coming on to the show today to talk to us about it. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Annie. Always appreciate your time.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Attorney General Andrew Bailey on with us for the state of Missouri, working to file suit. He has filed suit against Planned Parenthood for trafficking children out of state to obtain abortions without parental consent. We are in a Looney Tune land, and it's important that we continue to talk about this issue of the government. It's not specific to this, but it definitely includes this. The government's efforts to wedge itself in between parents and children is grooming. They have regulated grooming. And I don't think that it's an overstatement to suggest that.